It's 11:02. We now have a quorum. Go to item B, public comment. The board takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the board at this time. The board may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. So with that consent agenda, the consideration of approving the November 1st, 2018 meeting minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at those? So we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So we'll go ahead and move on to the regular agenda. For the sake of time, we do have Naomi's possibly needing to get out of here a little earlier. So I'll take a poll if you guys are okay with moving up the item number 3. We'll go ahead and move that up and discuss that. That way all of us are here to discuss that important topic. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Are we okay with that? Okay. So we'll go ahead and skip to 3, and then we'll come back. So item 3 is consideration of Civic Events Annual Hotel Occupancy Tax Allocation Method, percentage or fixed budget, and recommending any related matters.
Morning, Board.
Morning.
My name is Ryan Gaddy. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance for the city. And last month, last meeting, we presented to you a proposed fixed funding level for the Civic Events Fund. And at that time, you requested, and I think we received permission, obviously, from the council to table that item until you had some opportunity to review it and come back and discuss it further. So today what I'd like to do is just continue that conversation that we started last month, try to answer some questions for you so that you can make a recommendation to the council with regard to what the level of funding should be. Okay? So really, this slide and these figures show what the 2018 budget was in terms of the hotel occupancy tax funding to the Civic Events Board, or the Civic Events Fund. And last year that amount was about $892,000, and through the budget process, that amount was established for 2019 at to cover the expenses would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $931. So, and if you look at the breakout of the Civic Events budget and their operation, you can see that the venue activity generates about $515,000 of revenue, and we spend the direct expenditures associated with that are about $438. So the venues generate about $77,000 in contribution to the Civic Events Fund. The tax that is allocated to the Civic Events Group pretty much covers the administrative and the cost to operate the different venues. So that's where the amount of funding, the fixed amount of funding recommendation of the 930. Actually, I think we recommended a level of funding at 940, to give a little bit of coverage there. That's the macro view. If you look at it on a venue by venue basis, which I'm not sure there's a lot of value there for the present, but what I glean from this chart is that, you know, we're projecting some of the venues to be the expenditures to exceed the revenue. So there may be some opportunity there that would also contribute to the overall activities of the fund. So do you have any questions?
We'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions on that? Again, so you did clarify the proposed budget today is $930,886, correct?
That is
hot funding.
That is the budget.
Okay.
The 2019 budget.
So that is 48% of the estimated revenue that the city determined. The finance department sat down, determined a hot amount that they will receive in revenue, and from that calculated 48%, and that's how you got to 930?
Well, no, the 930 is what is required for the fund to be neutral, revenues less expenses.
Say that again.
You can see the 930 here, less the expenses, less the 930 plus what the venues generate of 77,000 is what is required to cover the administrative expenses. So that the fund is neutral with regard. You can see the revenue over or under expenditures line is zero. So that's where the 940 comes from.
Why wouldn't that be the 48% of hotel occupancy tax? Shouldn't that be, isn't that what it's supposed to be, is 48% of the hotel occupancy, not just what you need to put in the account to make it break even?
Well, the fixed, you know, again, that's what should be considered is what is the required level of funding. Not
The 48% is what I'm
So
understanding.
to answer your question, that is correct. So to answer your question, every year the finance department sits down and they estimated $1,939,000. That's what they're estimating that they receive in hot funding. Of that dollar amount, 48% is exactly $938.86. So that is a percentage-based budget that was adopted right there. That's not an amount that was come up to cover those costs. What that is that 930 number was given to Don, and Don then has to go through and balance his budget to be zero. He's got to balance that budget based off of 930 that was given to him by the finance department. So essentially, they already gave him a flat dollar amount that he's got to budget with.
And that's my question. So did they do the estimate, the budget based on a flat or based on a percentage?
Percentage.
Okay.
So is it 7% that the city receives from hot funding from hotels?
Yes.
So 7% rolls in, so they're forecasting that 7% will generate almost $2 million, 1.9, almost $2 million is what they're forecasting. So 48% of that is 930.
Okay.
And am I correct when you say at the bottom here, recommend establishing fixed funding level at 940? So you're giving, or they're providing additional 10,000 over the estimate that would have been for 2019, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that number can be, it could be 930, it could be 940. I mean, we were just trying to use a number that was slightly above what
That would be the fixed number.
right, correct. Subject to, you know, any,
So let me ask this question. We're talking about the budget cycle for 2019, right? The budget cycle starting in October of 2019, right?
no, the budget, the fiscal year for the city goes from September through
Or
August.
September, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, October through September.
Right.
So the budget cycle was completed, and we're already starting the new year, so no, this is the current budget that we're operating under.
Okay. How do we quantify the heads and beds number that we, through civic events, generate?
You know, I'm not familiar with that, but based on how we receive the payments from the hoteliers,
No, I don't understand
I don't-
that.
I don't
Well,
think-
how does civic events justify or verify that we brought in X number of heads and beds based on the events?
Yeah, Dale, that's a question that we've asked over the years. I think hoteliers, and I know there's a couple out there, I think sometimes there's different things during check-in, check-out. Maybe they ask questions like, you know, what brings you financial, things like that. But I don't know if there's any official way to
But
find
shouldn't
out.
we, as a board or an organization, have that responsibility?
How would you do it?
That's what I'm asking. How do we
So,
do that?
Let me kind of, because I know a lot of history on this, unfortunately. The way this goes is back, you know, and hopefully there's a slide that'll go through the history of, yeah, if you go to that next slide for me, Ryan, please. Maybe, I hope this answers your question, Doug, because I'm right there with you. So now back in 2012, those were all percentage based, okay? Those three organizations in 2012 had to come before council and provide their financials. That includes CVB, and that includes the arts. And civic events, obviously, they have to. They're an internal department. All three of those organizations had to come before council, show their financials, show their statistics. They all had to prove it. So there's
But
your.
how did we prove it? How did we say,
verify that?
we know that X number of people that came to events that were created or provided through civic events, how did we say we brought in 3,800 nights of heads and beds or hotel reservations?
The
Because-
CVB tries to do a little bit of that
Well, the
when they bring in
CVB
a
does, but
convention.
don't we have a responsibility?
When we sell tickets, we get zip codes as well, and we track it that way. But the question is, how does civic events specifically
Yeah.
determine out-of-town folks?
There was never a way for civic events to internally be able to get those types of numbers. There was never, before myself, there wasn't a way to get those. Now,
I'm
since
not-
we have concerts, we want to start getting those numbers. That's what it is now,
Yeah.
which is fine. We can get those numbers. We can always, Stubwire does have a way to track it by zip code, figure out different methods that way, but really and truly, that's really on the promoter side of things. We just facilitate the event, make sure we have everything in order for that event and push forward with that.
Right. Let me ask this question then. If cultural affairs, I'm looking at them, if they do an event, they get, well, that's not fair. Cultural affairs gives their money out. So they're a pass-through organization. They get 5% of hot tax money, and then they give it to organizations that apply for grants. Is that correct?
And that's it's a committee. It's a vigorous, from my understanding, it's a vigorous application process where each one of those entities have to apply,
So
provide those.
So
numbers.
I back off of that. Let me go to the Chamber CVB. Do they have to provide information relative to the funding that they spend on, to receive the funds that they get?
It's my understanding they do as well. They approach council, is it quarterly? I know, yeah, I think it's quarterly that they have to come. There's usually an agenda.
We
item.
don't.
Well, we're an internal department. We're under scrutiny daily.
No, but we don't. I mean, hot tax money is being allocated to civic events, but the hot tax money main purpose is to create heads and beds.
Well, if
I
you
mean,
read,
that's why we get the funding.
if you read
because-
tax code, it's also for maintenance of facilities. I mean, there's several items that these hot dollars can be utilized for. One of which, you're right, is circulating that funds and putting heads back in beds.
Right, I mean, so it's our responsibility to create events or facilitate events that are gonna create heads and beds. That's what our role is. And we should be tracking that in order to be able to justify the fact that we get grant money or.
So how
contract
is, how is this coming up when we started this in 2012, now in 2018, we're just now thinking about that?
I'm new on the board. I'm asking these questions. I mean, I would think that somebody should have been asking these questions back in
The former
2012.
president, I mean, the CVB president, I think she was on the board, or, I mean, she could probably speak to why they didn't talk about this back then.
No, I'm not.
I mean, I get it, but I want to know, okay, so how do we move forward? How are
Well,
we going to
that's what
start, how are we going to
that's what
start
I
tracking
think,
them?
I think that's where this discussion needs to be. I think that our responsibility as civic events board members is to figure that out and work on that so that whether we're at a flat tax or at a flat rate, or are we on a percentage, whatever it is, I think we have to be able to tell our story to be able to justify whatever it is that we're.
So
working
what-
Okay,
so what
so
you're try-
what, so
hang on
what
a
we're
second.
saying is, what events that we have, if they do not provide people to come from heads and beds, the local events that we do, we're not supposed to receive a good
No, I'm
portion
not
of the
saying
high
that.
tax?
I'm not saying that at all.
I mean,
So-
we do have the rodeo.
I think, and maybe what you're saying is what you want to do is figure out a way to quantify what events and what the different departments there are bringing in, and then allocate money maybe according to.
No,
what they-
no, I'm
what
not
they
saying
do.
allocate.
I mean-
I'm in, sorry.
It's a good song, by the way.
It's a good song.
Dale,
That's the soundtrack.
Dale, I see where you're coming from, and I agree that it should be, there should be justification and accountability for every dollar that's being spent. I totally agree with that.
Right.
But I think also we need to take into account that, the Civic Events Department is not necessarily in it for that. We have to maintain the facilities in order to bring those people to town.
Right,
Our Pacific.
right, and I agree with that.
Our only
I'm just
job
saying-
isn't just heads and beds. We still provide for the local community too as well, all types of events. So it can't just be specifically, well, how many heads and beds do you all put?
And I think
I
by-
mean,
Right, but
if
all
that's
I'm
something that
sa-
we need to track, then we can move forward and track it. But at this point in time, no, there wasn't no way that we had that. And nobody discussed that beforehand with us, with anybody.
Right, and so I'm bringing it up as a point that we should be doing that in order, I'm not saying that, just to be clear, I'm not saying that we shouldn't get hot tax money. I totally in agreement that we should be getting hot tax money because of the reasons you just stated. I just want to be able to go back, when I go back to council, to my council member, which is the mayor, when I go back to her and I say, Mayor, this is what we're doing. We are creating and we're contributing to the fact that hot tax funds are that are being generated through civic events. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think you can look at that kind of by default based on the event. So for instance, of a convention, the CVB is kind of more in line with trying to track that and figure out they're right on the heartbeat of what's going on with that. But if you get a local quinceañera or whatever, you wouldn't expect a single head in bed because it's probably all
That's a
local
lie.
people.
That's not
Yeah,
true.
that's not
That's
true.
not
A
true.
lot of
They
people
go
travel
right
Yeah.
into that
to
hotel.
Well, I mean,
right
then,
there.
yeah,
Plenty of
okay.
times.
So you're-
We just had
that's
some. We
add-
can track
so
those.
I think that's that's a great example where those events do create weddings, civic, things that are
Yeah, I
being
get- yeah,
utilized, these facilities. I bet we have a great story to tell.
Yeah, but for anything to qualify for hot taxes, it's a two-step process, okay? But one of the process is heads in bed. But if you read a little bit further, not necessarily does that event have to generate heads in bed, but somebody could be here for a totally unrelated reason, but decide to go, say, watch the Aaron concert on December 1st, and that's still considered a head in bed, even
And-
though they didn't come into town for that Aaron Watson concert.
And that happens plenty of times. And I don't see how that doesn't serve as something that we are actually doing. If they're already staying at the hotel and they're doing something on the base and they're going to visit for their sons graduating from school and then we're having a concert that same night, we're actually participating in that, in them being in the hotel and using that for hot tax. I mean,
No,
we
I
should
agree.
be.
I agree. There's a lot of different ways that people utilize or hot tax money is garnered or gained for various reasons. But I think we should be tracking heads and beds for events that civic events is doing. That's all I'm asking.
So then my next question would be, how are we
Yeah.
supposed to track them? Our job is to facilitate the event. Now we're asking, okay, the promoter, we need your information from the event that you put on. Remember, we don't do our own ticketing anymore, so we don't have the access of that. We only have the access of knowing how many tickets we sold for those events. So you are getting into some privacy information, other information too as well. We would love to be able to track them, but we will have to go through some more steps because it's not just we have a way to get online and be able to find that out. Okay. If there's some way for us to be able to find out from these events, I'm all for it. I'm all for
I
proving how
think
many
it's always
hotel
been
rooms we can
a
get.
discussion, but there's never been an actual hard case solution where you say, okay,
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean-
the system, and I'm pretty sure that
difficult to do.
and I keep going to the CVB on that, but I think that that's part of their continued frustration is there's too many pieces, there's too many people involved, there's too many details to be
true
put
reflection.
together that if it just doesn't all come together, that's based on promoters, that's based on hotels turning that in, that's based on everything. And it's nearly impossible.
And if you tracked it, Sid, would it be a true reflection?
No. Even if you went by zip codes, because people that are from the base might have zip codes from out of town and they're staying actually in San Angelo, so, no.
Dale, I agree with what you're saying. I do. I think everybody should be accountable for every dollar that gets spent. I see where you're coming from, and I think you're only simply asking because really, if we can track it, we should try. I mean, I agree, but again, I have the same question as that all of you guys do. How? How do you track? How does the CVB track it?
Yeah, how does CVB track?
Is it just the influx
do
of
the
hotel
hotels
stays
track?
during a specific time frame? Like, for instance, you can come up if you like, but while you're coming up, I'll bring up the rodeo, for instance. We know that they operate for 3 weeks. So we know that there's a huge increase in hotel stays during those 3 weeks. So we can see that, okay?
We
But
don't know how many.
right, we don't know exactly how many, right? But we know, oh yeah, there's a huge increase of stays. So again, how do you guys track that?
We do have software that allows us to do that. What we do is when an event planner, any kind of event, any kind of meeting, wedding, whatever it may be, we work directly, our sales staff works directly with our hoteliers. And if the event comes to us and they're just looking for goodie bags or whatever it may be, we ask them what hoteliers are you using, or hotels are you using, and then we reach out to the hotels after the event to say how many were picked up in that block. Now, not all of them are picked up in the block. Some people may have points they want to honor, but if they are, 30 rooms in that block and their 30 rooms are picked up, we know they came for that, and then we put those in our system. So that's how we do it. So my suggestion would be talk to your promoters and ask them to work with our hoteliers. There's a good representation of hoteliers here today, and work with those promoters, and then you have blocks. You may have blocks in 4 different hotels, but then follow up at the end, and those hoteliers can tell you how many filled the block.
So do you guys track when there is a concert that happens to be at one of our facilities? Do you guys track those hotel stays?
We're not always, I'm not always made privy to when concerts are. I find them on Facebook. I find a lot of events on Facebook. We still work with not just civic events. I'm not saying just the city. I'm talking about people all over. When they have events, we have to find those to put them on our calendar. But I think they had I'm trying to think of who it was, 2 years ago, a concert when I first started, Gary Allen. That had 75 hotel room nights that we were able to actually see. I don't know how they tracked that, but there were 75 room nights for that event. And Sid's right, zip code tracking doesn't necessarily work for this because ASU or Goodfellow, they may have a home zip code. It's not going to make any difference. But if you work with the hoteliers, that would be my suggestion.
And we're all for cost sharing. If there's better communication, can we not utilize the same software? That way we both benefit off the same numbers?
Yeah, if they want to let us know what is going on with different activities as they are in that first stage with whoever they're meeting with weddings, whatever it may be, our staff can work with hoteliers to get better rates, better blocks, more opportunities. So we can do that if we have that opportunity.
Yes, I wanted to say, this discussion is important. I think we should continue it.
It has nothing to do.
It applies to whether it's a fixed budget or a percentage budget, either way. So
Back on track.
Yes.
let's get back on track to talk about whether, whatever recommendation you want to have, whether a fixed or percentage budget. And part of your recommendation could be that we start working on a process method to start tracking that. Because as the law states, I mean, the HOT can go towards the maintenance and function of our facilities if 50% is the primary use by outside folks coming in to stay the night. So it does connect the dots that we should be tracking it somehow, but we haven't been.
So in regard to the fixed versus the flat fee, are you just proposing that for just this year? Or are you saying for next year or what in the future?
I think it would probably, I think it would be, the fixed amount would be set going forward, similar to what the chamber is and what, the rest of the organizations.
I don't think that's a good idea necessarily, because what if it goes down or what if it goes up? Hotel occupancy tax.
And then, well, that's when we then go to council and say, we need more money. If we can justify it. That's why I bring up the whole thing about, are we tracking, what are we doing in relationship to contributing to the hot tax fund? So we have to be able to justify that, and therefore I ask that question. And if we're in a down period of time, what did we do in the past? This isn't the first time. You referenced a history of having not ever been asked the question. Now I'm asking you, what have we done in the past when we were on a percentage base and percentages went down? Hotel occupancy tax funds went down. What did we do?
Well,
We're running in the
the
red, I think.
situation is, and this is why I don't really have an issue personally with the fixed budget, because we have been operating with a fixed budget. Through the budget process, we get allocated money into accounts. The excess, whatever revenue coming in from HOT was excess, goes to the fund balance. It's been that way since I've been here. Our budgets have been fixed in separate accounts. Just the excess, whatever we didn't spend out of those went to the fund balance. The difference now is that we have two separate fund balances, one for civic events and one for HOT. That's what the difference is now from what we were before.
So what's the staff's recommendation? Go percentage or flat?
And let me clarify. My understanding is we already have a budget set for this fiscal year. My understanding is this discussion, council would make a recommendation for next fiscal year.
Said it was this year. Did you not say it
No,
was for
he
this
said it
fiscal year?
was this year.
I mean, it would, your budget's set for this year, so the fixed amount.
So we're talking
My-
about a year away from now.
Next year's budget.
Right.
would be-
Right, and those discussions will come up soon because we start talking that in January and February. My understanding is for next fiscal year because budget's
So
already
we're
set
a year
for
in
this fiscal
advance
year.
talking about this.
Well, and let me, Tim, to your discussion here. The reason I asked for this slide was because if you look in 2012, you can add up those percentages. That's 100%, okay? Go to and that, it is mathematically impossible to over-allocate, right? So if your hot dollars come in lower than you estimated, everybody else has to live within their means. They've got to adjust too, which is what we've been doing 2012 and prior for years. It's been perfectly fine. 2013, they decided to go flat with CVB. There's reasonings for that. We won't get into any of that. I don't think everyone knows the whole history of that, but there's a reason for that. 2014, there's the same. 2015, you add another one. 2016, you start over allocating. I did the numbers, just went back to 18 and 19, 2018. So let me backtrack. The main reason we asked for two separate funds is because all of the surplus dollars were going into one fund balance, and everybody had their hands in that fund balance. And when we started seeing 2016, we started seeing all these other people starting to get a piece of this pie. We decided, well, that's fine if that's what council and staff wants to do, but give us our 48% and let us live within our means and let us take care of ourselves and our own facilities, because at the end of the day, these facilities are ours and we have to control them. So that's where we separated into two funds. So in doing so, like I said, I went back and did some math on 18 and 19. Last year, if you take 48% that went to us and 5% to the arts, okay, that's 53%. So that leaves 42%, sorry, thank you. I'm trying to do math here. 47% that leaves for Fund 605 to allocate, right? They actually allocated 56.6%. How do they do that? Well, it's because they went flat. It wasn't able to self-govern and self-adjust based on the times. So they over-allocated 6.6, more than that. They allocated 56.6, which is total, grand total, if you add in our 48%, the 5%, and everything that they allocated, that was 109.6%. When back in 2012, we were at 100%, and we didn't get in any trouble.
Steve, I think I want to clarify something there. In 2017, the Civic events actually received something in excess of 48% because you withdrew some fund balance to do some major repairs.
Right, but that's,
In
that,
2018, you did the same thing. I think you withdrew 56%. So, you know, the mechanism, I guess my point there is the mechanism is in place to the extent you need additional funds to make major improvements to the different facilities. The mechanism is in place for you to do that. In the last 2 years, actually, I think even in 2016, there was some work done. So the mechanism is in place, like Carl said. Whenever there's additional funds needed for you to present your case, the council will consider and make those.
but what you need to understand is if they keep over allocating in 605, that's going to keep decreasing their fund balance. And we can't go to that fund balance because everybody else has dipped into that fund balance. So we would like to have our 48%, let that over-realized revenue flow into fund balance and let us manage that ourselves. That's my opinion, for whatever it's worth. And you're correct, we did receive some extra money, but that doesn't count as the 48%. That just counts as, hey, we've got some surplus, let's take care of our facilities. So we went to council and asked for a little additional money. We were able to take care of it. That's what you do with a surplus.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, if we've got Fund 605 and Fund 410, and Fund 605 keeps over allocating 7, 5, 8% year after year after year, we're not going to have any money to go to in 605. We're solely going to have to rely on Fund 410.
Are you saying a percentage basis for all these categories would mathematically be safer?
Absolutely, it's self-governing. The tax code, 49 pages of tax code, all of it in there is percentage-based. Our sales tax that we receive, it's percentage-based. The general fund functions off of percentage.
Okay, so here's my recommendation. I think we should be focused on figuring out how we can help Sid and Carl come up with additional funds through the programs that are in play. I think that's our responsibility, is to create and figure out how can we generate more revenue to make up, or and if it's and we're in a position to not have to rely on hot tax money.
We do that now. We're doing that now. We have for the last few years. We've generated more revenue than we ever have.
Steve, I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe it's because I'm still fairly new, but if we have been operating on a percentage base over the past few years and done well, what's pushing the city to move us to a flat rate now? I mean, why is this coming up?
I think the simple answer to that is that the council has directed us to consider that and to get your
Why?
feedback.
Why is the council all of a sudden saying, hey, we need to change this?
I guess the
I think
second,
their interest is in having all the recipients go to a fixed budget.
But if
Not
this is
percentage.
working for us, it's kind of like the old saying, if it's not broken, why fix it?
I think that's why they're asking us as a board to
And
make a recommendation back to them.
It almost
And
seems
then
like all.
I think we have an option to say, as a board, we like percentage.
Yeah, and
Or as a board, we like flat.
And
Personally, I would say as a board, we like percentage, but that's just me.
But let me
Other
ask you,
side of
why
that
doesn't every line item right there go to a percentage? That way, when we have.
yeah, I think
why
that's a
does-
great idea.
In other words, because if revenue goes down, downtown, Fort Concho, the sports complex, they all stay, and all of a sudden, there's less money, but they're still getting the exact same amount.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you fluctuate percentage based, so that way on the good years, they get a little bit more money, on the bad years, they get a little bit less money?
And the glaring-
And you can never overspend at that point.
The glaring number up there is CVB's takes the most money, so is it a good decision or bad decision from CVB's perspective to go to a flat rate versus a percentage?
Well,
Well, the 48% is higher than the CVB. I mean,
No, I get that,
mean,
but what
the-
I'm saying
if
is
you look at the,
you guys are
the
the
civ-
highest flat rate you guys take the flat rate at the largest amount, whereas we're percentage based currently.
If I can speak, I don't know who was at the council meeting 2
I was.
months ago,
Mike,
whatever it was.
Can you state your name as well, please?
No, that's okay. Diane Bass,
Thank you.
Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Thank
The
you.
mayor, Councilman Thomas, and Councilman Carter all talked about the possibility of moving to percentages. Those three. The other council members, I don't think, touched on it, but those three did talk about it. And I think that's why this whole conversation is happening about percentages versus flat. So that
So
was the
in-
conversation.
And I don't know if you're allowed to speak for everyone, your board and everyone, but, you guys used to be percentage-based, and you were at 47%. And when you went down to 795, at that point, it ducked down to, it was like 44%. And then everybody else started getting a piece of that pie. So like I said, we were living great back in the day in 2012, and then we started adding in all these other folks, which I'm not saying they're not deserving of the funds. I'm not saying that at all. But you guys took a hit to take care of some of those other ones, and it just feels like to me, here we are, now we've over allocated again, because we're giving out so much money. Who's the next to take a hit? Civic
And
Events.
I've only been there since 2017, so I don't know how that history
Sure.
happened. I can tell you, according to law, and as you probably all know, you can allocate up to and no more than 15% across the board that can be used for the arts. Only 15% max that can be used for historic preservation. So whether Civic Events is spending that money for arts or downtown
That's a
or the Arts
max.
Council,
it's a max, not a
it's a
min.
max 15% across the board, not per entity.
That's why it was
So,
always
yeah.
percentage-based, because it was self-governing. I mean, you didn't have someone, because I'm telling you right now,
Yeah, I
if-
think percentage based is the best way to go for this.
There aren't-
let's take,
it
let's
just
take,
says there's not any percentages specific to civic events or chamber.
no, but let's take the arts, since she brought up the arts. Let's bring up the arts. The arts are getting 5%. In SAPAC, there's another $50,000. Okay, so last year, SACAC, roughly $100,000 they received last year. Plus your 50 there, $150,000 that the arts received. And that's out there. So what happens if we go to a flat fee for SACAC and performing arts? Let's just say they now have decided to take SACAC at $100,000 flat, and now SAPAC is flat, continues flat. That's $150,000. If we generate less than $1 million of hotel occupancy tax dollars, we are now contractually obligated to those two individuals, and we have now violated the law because we have allocated over 15%. Same for some of the other items that you had said. That's why it's percentage-based, because it's self-governing. It
As I
doesn't,
recall, the only one that's mentioned as percentage-based is the arts. And so that would probably should stay percentage-based.
well, but in regards to our board, then maybe this isn't the time, but in my opinion, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and, we have considered both sides and we are listening to the city, but it doesn't seem to be in our favor to change what is working for us now. So based on that, I'd like to recommend and make the motion to stay with the percentage rather than going to a flat rate.
we have a
I'll
motion.
I'll put a second on it.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other discussion before we take a vote?
I mean, I'd like somebody to approach council and go percentage based across the board, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know that we can make that recommendation because we're really just dealing with civic events. But, I mean, to go back to what Dale talked about earlier on how the civic events justifies their head and beds, the four that are not, that are below, that are flat, how do they justify and how do they quantify how much money they're getting based on heads and beds?
I think-
And you're familiar with downtown San Angelo. How would you quantify your 37.5 that you're getting? How do you justify your heads and beds?
Ours is historic preservation, and on the economic development side, we've created over $200 million since the inception of downtown San Angelo, in economic development and tax revenue, and it's all,
No, I'm not,
Yeah,
believe me,
so-
I understand, I
so
understand your
the
organization. I know what you guys do.
37.5 is nothing
have a
compared to
motion
what
on
we
the-
generate.
But
But
there's
so-
still qualification for hot taxes, is my point.
Guys, we can
Okay.
discuss the,
Yeah.
But,
Karen's right, we do, we have
Let
them.
me ask this question. Did we all talk to our council people?
I did.
I did.
And what did they say?
That's,
I talked to mine, and mine said, let's go with a fixed.
Well, the thing is if we're all gonna vote the way our council members votes, then they should be here instead of us.
And
No,
we-
no,
we
and I'm
have our
just
own
asking.
opinions.
and that's kind of, I mean, we've got, Karen's right, we have a motion, that's the way it needs to go. We have a motion, we need to take second, unfortunately. You know, there's discussion, we can have more discussion with our council members, you know, as much as we want, but I agree, I'm here for my council member, and I'm gonna vote for him. So with that said, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have 5-1, so motion passes to recommend the percentage-based, I'm sorry, 6-1.
6-1.
Tim came in, sorry about that, buddy.
Percentage-based for sure.
Thank you.
There's only-
Excuse me,
there's only
6
one
to
nay?
1, correct.
Yes.
6 to 1 vote that we recommend percentage-based to council.
Now, can there be further discussion on how to help generate revenue to assist what, you know?
We would have
It's
to put that on
lacking
an
there,
agenda
yeah.
item and discuss that.
And I think there may be another item to maybe address that. If not,
Okay.
absolutely, I think we should put it on. I think it's a great, and Dale brought that up too. I think it's a great topic as well as,
Just to follow up on this item, I'm not sure when the discussion item go back to council. Have you heard anything? I haven't. But we'll let you know when.
The council member I spoke with suggested that it would be January because December is tied up with the storm sewer. And they're only gonna meet once in December, so
That makes sense.
he suggested it would be in January.
When it is on the agenda, we'll let you know.
so we'll go ahead and, Naomi, if you need to excuse yourself. Thank you for coming for that important item.
Great discussion.
We'll go ahead and jump back up to item 2, presentation of monthly financial report and event calendar.
Hold on, before we move on. And I'm not sure we called for public comment when we made that
did
last
come
vote.
for- Yeah, we
We
did.
did?
Yes.
Was there any additional comments on that
Okay.
item? Okay.
Oh,
Want to make sure the public has the opportunity to comment.
no, I see what you're saying. We did, initially, but not on the vote.
So we
didn't.
took the vote, and is there, I'm sorry, you're correct. Is there any additional public comment? Thank you guys for your participation during that as well. Thank you, Carl. So with that, we'll go ahead, like I said, and move to presentation of financial report and event calendar.
I did
Event
not
calendar.
receive a calendar or the financials on the emails. And it's not in this one either. Well, the calendar is. Okay.
Of the financials.
Not the financials.
Apologize for my voice, a little hoarse today. On the financials, the October fund balance is out, but it is not approved, so we cannot discuss that at this point. However, for civic events, what I have seen, everything looks very good. One thing, counting the last 2 concerts that we have not received our total revenues for, the River Stage is within $200 or $300 of meeting its entire budget for fiscal year 19. So from that standpoint, everything from here on is potentially gravy. That's because we've had an increase in the number of promoters that are anxious and want to come to San Angelo to have concerts. Other than that, from all the numbers that we've had so far, when you do get the fund balance, if you look on there, you'll see that it looks like, for example, it looks like the River Stage has more expenses than it has revenue. But I need to explain something to you that every October, we request through the purchasing department blanket POs for example, Republic Services, which is a contractor with the city for trash. And if they have a contract with the city, we don't get what we call a blanket PO, which if I ask for $12,000 as a blanket and I get a PO for that, it doesn't seize the money at that point in time, only when I actually process invoices against it. However, if there's a contract, then they do what they call an inverted purchase order, which means that that money is then seized and it can't be used for anything other than Republic Services, for example. And we have several contractors that we use. Our electricity repair and maintenance is the same way. So when you look in October, you think, golly, they have just blown a bunch of money the first month. But actually, that is for an entire year. And it is encumbered, but it is not yet actually spent. So I just wanted to make y'all aware of that. I didn't know, with some new members, I didn't know if y'all knew that or not.
I didn't. Thank you for explaining
But it's
that.
called an encumbrance as opposed to just an actual expense. The encumbrance becomes an expense all at once, but then when we pay it each month, it doesn't add to that. It's already there. Then at the end of the year, if we don't spend all that money, I cancel the PO, which is an inverted PO. That money then falls back into Fund 410. So just kind of a word of caution. And if you'd like to know more information on that, I'd be glad to meet with you or give you information, because we have quite a few blankets and inverted POs that we use every year. Y'all have any questions?
Thank you, Bill.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
just one question. You know, as far as the financials go, you know, we typically meet the last Thursday of the month. And I guess maybe I'm ignorant to it, but I guess 3 weeks seems like sufficient time to be able to close out the prior month. So why are we not getting financials from the prior month?
I can't answer that. You'd have to, maybe if Ryan's still here, maybe he can answer that.
And there's probably a great explanation for it. I'm just curious.
That comes from the finance department. In other words, I can't generate those sheets that we give y'all
Right.
Until they're officially, they have a committee meeting, I know, that they discuss that, and it's either approved, or if there's some questions, I presume it has to be kind of like what we had to do with this meeting, have to have another meeting to discuss it. But
I'm sure the
Ryan might
holidays
can-
probably
Yes,
played in.
the October financials, because they are the first month of the year, and we have to cycle through everything. It did take us a little longer this year than normally does, but typically we would have them out to you by the time this meeting occurs. So
Which is closing up the prior fiscal year,
right,
kind of
the
delayed. Okay,
closing of
I
the
got you.
prior year, rolling the budgets into the new year, and just making all those changes. And we just didn't get. We met yesterday, so they are final now. But so we can get them to you guys. I guess you can email them to them or make them available.
Appreciate that. Any other questions on financials, or are you going to go over the calendar as well? One of you guys?
I have a comment on just something that you said, or he said, and that was that you've seen a tremendous amount, or you've seen an increase because of the concerts that are taking place, and kudos to Sydney and his staff and Diane and everybody else that participate in bringing that type of attention to the city, that we're a place and a venue that can handle and can do these things, and that's credit to you guys, because y'all have been working on that for a while now.
Thank you. And the next two concerts, one's this Saturday night, and then we have one the following Friday night. Those are at the Coliseum.
Right, and
These
those
that
are
we
the
would-
things, I think, going back to what I said earlier, I think those are the things that we should be focusing on, trying to figure out how can we even do a better job, and what do we need to do to make it even more attractive to bring in these promoters and work with these promoters, so that we can continue to see the increases that we're seeing now. I mean, I think it's great.
Well, I think especially after these next two concerts, if you go to them, and when you see the LED lighting that was redone for the Coliseum, and how much more detail that you can see actually looking out on the floor. I was out there as they were putting the spas in right after we completed that. And it's amazing the difference in just looking out, even from the box seats, that you could look out and see the detail that you couldn't see before. And I think those type of improvements, if we continue doing that, that's going to attract a lot more concerts as well as other events. And the thing about it is that promoters talk to each other. And if they find out that one's satisfied with the location, even though we may be the midway point between a Houston and a Lubbock, nonetheless, and maybe all they're wanting to do, if they just have enough people to meet their expenses, we still benefit from it.
Exactly.
Okay?
Super.
Thank you.
That's great. You gonna hit on the calendar, Sid? Can I make one comment about the calendar before we get there? You know, in going back to what Dale had mentioned, I think, is there a possibility to send this calendar out to the folks that are sitting here at the CVB? Can we push that out and have better communication with all of our partners that,
Not the cal-
you do get the calendar?
Yeah, we get them.
Because the communication was mentioned, and just want to make sure we're all working together to be informed. You threw off your whole presentation.
I just saw it.
Yeah, because remember we started the other way. All right, let's go to November bookings. As you can see on the screen, there's 60 total bookings that we had in November. With the convention center holding 29, 14 of those were City of San Angelo meetings. Of course, we had 4 at the Coliseum, as you can see, 4 at the River Stage, 7 at El Paseo, and so forth. And then for December, we had a total of 86 bookings, convention center at 29. Same for the City of San Angelo, 14, and then the Coliseum, same 4. We have 2 concerts and some other events as well over there. River Stage, Paseo, Pecan Creek, and East Mezzanine had some bookings as well. Past events that we just had, of course, we had the Texas Music Festival, November 10th with Randy Rogers in concert with a plethora of other artists too as well. The event started at 2, didn't end until about 11:30. A great event overall with same thing, piggybacking off of what Don said. These promoters they talk to each other. This promoter, for instance, he's coming back to us in March with another, or in April with another event as well. So whenever you have those promoters coming back to you twice in a year, that definitely helps out with the budget too.
You happen to know the attendance for that particular?
Around 1,500.
1,500.
And another thing, I think he's probably going to move his event instead of doing it in that November timeframe to the April timeframe. This was just something that he wanted to try out, and I think just due to the weather, I think he's going to want to be able to move it into the springtime, which is a lot heavier with all other festivals and events too as well, but I think he can manage too. And then we also had Pearl Fest, which is more of they try to go after the Austin type vibe of a crowd and more independent music. This was their second year as well, participating with us at the River Stage. They had a small crowd, but they're actually still building. They want to make sure that they can come back next year and keep building that crowd and making it a bigger festival throughout the years. They do plan on staying in November too as well. Future events that we do have that we have coming up is Aaron Watson concert that's happening this Saturday, December 1st at the Coliseum. Tickets are going well for that concert right now. Then we follow back up with Cody Johnson in concert December 7th, the following Friday. That's another concert that's selling pretty well as well in tickets. The Gun and Blade Trade Show, they come 3 times a year. This is their first one for 2019. It's on January 12th and 13th. Then we have our annual Girl Power that happens over here at the Convention Center. They always have a packed house full of young ladies and just great speakers too as well that they can listen to. West Texas Bridal Showcase as well takes place over here on January 20th. And then, of course, following that, you have the rodeo and all types of other events that'll be taking place. With the extra additional concerts and additional events that we have been putting on, it has been a stressor for us with the staffing wise, because of course when we have the concerts we have to probably staff about a good 8, 9 staff team members over there to work on it, and then we still have events going on at the convention center or maybe at Pecan Creek too as well. So there could be some discussion coming up about hoping that we can get another event service rep, to be able to open up a job position, hopefully. And that's it for the event calendar.
I have a question.
Any questions?
Sydney, how can we help you on some of these? And we were talking, you brought up the promoters and how they talk to each other, and how can we help you? And here's where I'm coming from, just to be clear. Relationships are everything. If we establish positive, great relationships with these promoters, and build on that, how can we help you with that? And then I know I'm throwing you something that probably you hadn't thought about, but let's think about that. How can we as a board or through our other partners, CVB specifically, how can we do a better job of coordinating with the hotels? Can we convince these promoters to include hotel packages as an incentive? I mean, I don't know how that all works, but
What are we giving the promoters?
yeah, that's what I'm asking. How do we?
What are we going to give back to the promoters? All I do is do a great deal and hope that they can come back and their event sells well. It's the thing that I see where we can help promoters at is being able to help them market.
You make a great point, Dale. And the thing is, I think more communication between Civic Events and CVB is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, how do we?
Maybe a couple more meetings, either quarterly or semi-annually meetings between Civic Events and CVB would probably be useful.
Because again, it's about the relationship with these folks, and the more we're able to help them be successful, the more successful we're going to be.
Let me touch on this. If the more we help them, the first person that doesn't help them, then it's going to fall back on myself and them coming back, because we're leading them into the next, this person's going to possibly help you. Again, I think we can help them with marketing in those ways. I don't like to put too much into it because we have a committee that I bring the deal to. The deal gets structured, it's done, then we go to the next phase of it. They're going to want to know they want to be, as much as they incentivize, they want to know what are they getting to as well. That's a big portion of it. And for me, it's more of, let's try to help them market. If we want to try to get some people from out of town to come and stay in the city for whatever event is going on, how are we helping them being able to market? That's my biggest piece. So I would love to plan to where we have festivals March, April, May, June, all of those festivals that we have coming up. Let's get a billboard for all of them. And let's put them in particular places where people know that San Angelo really does have events that are going on throughout the year. Not just one, they have throughout the year. They have plenty of events going on.
And Sid,
let's give them
guys,
all.
Let's make this another agenda item, because really I don't think we can be discussing. I mean, this is great conversation, but let's recommend that as another agenda item, and I think it's a good idea. I don't think we're straying off topic again. Sorry.
I agree. It's a
Not a problem.
good idea to have that
I'm
discussion.
just bringing up a question,
I think
and
so.
I'm asking.
And I'm not trying to cut you off. Please
No,
don't.
I'm just
take
saying,
it.
I'm not taking it that way. I'm just saying, that's something
Let's
I think
open
that
it
we
up.
need to figure it out.
Tighten the bonds between work together, communicate,
Well,
see how we can work
how
together.
can we help promoters?
Right.
Number one question. How can we do that? And we can have that discussion,
Yeah.
but at least Sydney can start. I mean, you made some points. How do we do marketing? How do we better market? Who do we do that with? That's all I'm asking. So that's something that we can discuss, but I think that's something that we need to pursue.
Good deal. Are we done with the calendar on that one? Okay. So that's not a action item. So we'll go ahead and move to number 4, discussion of civic events, facilities, projects, and recommending any related matters.
No matter what we do, when people come here and try to help them out and everything, if they get to our facilities and they don't like our facilities because they're not kept up and everything, nothing's going to help that unless we keep them up. So that's what we're trying to do. I tell my guys that San Angelo is represented by what they see in you when they get here. So that's a big thing. And so my guys, and I give all kudos to the guys that work on the floor because they do a great job. And I know they're not recognized because they're not here in the meeting and everything, but they do a great job. So I just want the board to know that those guys, when you see them walking in here with water and whatever, just say thank you to them because they do a great job. So anyway, all right. So going to the lower ring, we finished that about a week ago, and we got really fortunate this time because it was raining when they finished. So they were able to walk around and make sure that nothing was leaking. Usually when they repair a roof or something, it might be 3 months before we realize that, hey, there's a leak here. So that worked out very well for us. We finished the electricity at the river stage. We've got to cover up the hole yet, but it's all in place and everything. So now we've got outlets where they would run spotlights and that kind of thing instead of having to run cables all over, which is very unsightly and not safe. And so that's all done, and we just have to fill that in. That'll be done today or tomorrow because we got an event over there on the 6th with the veterans. So other than that, all the write-ups that we got from the fire marshal and everything is complete. All the sprinkler heads have been replaced and everything. So safety-wise, we're up and running good out there. So
Good job, Steve.
when you walk through next month or whatever, you're going to see some of the changes we've made and everything, and it really looks nice. So, but there's still many things to do when you're trying to upkeep this many buildings that are this old. It takes a lot of effort. So, but we're working on it. So, any questions for me?
Last time you said that y'all were going out for bids on the restrooms at the river stage.
Yeah, we've started that process already, and we're working with an engineer.
You're getting quotes, and you're not formally getting bids.
We're not funding. We're just working on getting quotes. Yes.
So we have a better idea how much it's going to cost.
Exactly, and so we got an engineer working on that right now. So we'll get a good idea of that. If you take a look down there and you have an idea of what you'd like to see, we're open to that too. So we're not just trying to nail it down just with us. So if you see something you'd like to see and you think of a better way we could do it, we're open for suggestion on that. So please take a look.
Steve, I commend you and your staff. In the years that I've been on the board, I've seen the improvements, the doors, the things that you've done at the Coliseum out here at the river stage. So I've seen firsthand the things that you guys have done. So you guys have got a tremendous job. I remember what y'all did with the locker room,
Yeah.
and you guys just got in there and did it yourself. So
Yep.
good job with you and your staff.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll echo that, exactly what he said. I agree. Does anyone else have any questions on this facility improvements? Do we have any other items, Sid, that are kind of up there that we should be addressing on these facilities that we haven't quite gotten to yet?
Scrubbers and
There's always something in there.
I heard it. Parking lots, definitely. For each facility, Coliseum, Paseo, Convention Center, whenever we do the walkthroughs, we definitely need to look at the condition of our parking lots. Of course, the expense on that is pretty high, but it's something that needs to be taken care of. There's huge potholes.
We've talked about having those resurfaced for a couple of years now and have to keep putting
So
it off.
that's probably,
We ought to go with it somewhere.
for our facility improvements, Phase 3, I mean, that's what I would probably be going forward with, is just with the parking lots for the most part.
I wish you guys could get that property underneath the bridge by the river stage and have a walkway and have another parking lot for that river stage. It gets packed whenever you go to an event there.
It is city property where the old Edgewater in.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It
If
is
I could
city
go into a
property.
parking lot and have some kind of way to get, under the bridge, a nice lighted walkway to get to the other side of the river stage, I would love it. That's a whole nother issue, but just recommended it.
That's prime property
Hey,
for a
can we
parking
talk
lot.
to Shane Kelton about getting some access?
prime
any of
property
his
just to put a
access,
parking lot on.
Paving
Let's not do anything.
equipment?
For that location?
No,
Oh,
for
just in
just
general.
redoing the parking lots.
Yeah. Well, we've had the conversation with him, but he comes back to us and asks us how are we going to fund it. It
Sounds
always
like an
comes back
indirect
to the
cost
money.
to me.
Write it off as practice on the machine, yeah.
Doesn't he have any access left over from some of the roads that he does?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I said, doesn't he have any access from any of the roads that he's working on? Access tar or whatever?
Oh,
that-
excess?
Yeah.
Well, the city doesn't do a whole lot of road work itself. We contract that out, and it's for specific,
Okay. Got it.
specific
They have
streets.
been patching.
And usually every year they come to us and say, you know, we're putting out the bid for the seal coat and road work. You know, what do you have that needs to be done? And so we report what we need to be get done. And they said, okay, it'll probably cost this. How are you going to fund it? It still comes
What has
back.
that been in the past? Any
How
rough
much?
idea? Yeah.
The Coliseum's the biggest one. I think it was close to 200,000. Paseo, of course, is smaller. You're probably looking 30, 40,000. So we're back up to half
It's
$1 million.
about a quarter. Yeah, it's about a $250,000.
You know, you guys do a great job of living within your means. And every year, you know, especially, we just had this topic, but, you know, as the surplus or over-realized revenue comes in, I think we need to start really looking at taking care of some of these items. And we've got to, while the pendulum swung this way, we've got to start taking care of them because we know it's going to go back the other way, and we're going to have to buckle down and live within our means again, which then you create more revenue. So I think we should probably get a list going of, you know, there's the capital project items that I'm sure that you guys, you know, submit annually, that 5-year plan, but maybe bring something to us for the bigger items like that may be potentially years out.
I think that it's kind of the direction you're working on with the walkthroughs.
Yes, with the
Okay,
walkthroughs,
great.
and then after that, we'll
Great.
move
Okay.
forward with the steps.
So you're already there.
I think he's kind of getting in a cycle now where every year we take a look at what we need to do for the next year and
Bring it-
identify those needs and work towards funding them.
Good.
But so, like he said, parking lots is getting higher on the list.
And is this an opportunity for us to, again, go back to our council representatives and say, hey, this is our priority list. We really need your support on getting the funding for these projects.
Yes, once the board gets settled on what those recommendations should be, that would be good, because after that, then he takes it to city council.
Are those items on the CIP plan currently?
Yes.
So they're going before council every year.
Right.
Of course, the council has to prioritize with their pot of money, and
Right, but I'm saying, in our role, we should be banging on their door and saying, look, we need this done, and this is why.
I agree. Okay. Do we have any other questions on discussion of our facility projects? We'll go ahead and move to the next one. It's discussion of adding additional safety policies to the civic events policies and recommending any related matters.
This should be relatively quick. Of course, we have our civic event facility policies. I would like to add an addition into it for a security policy, and it's basically just to get us in line with all the other facilities around the country and with the incidents that have been happening at some of these concerts, events, and festivals, just so we can step up our safety for our customers as well. So, get right into it. Implementing a new clear bag security policy regulating the size and types of bags that may be carried into the facilities. What are we trying to do? Of course, is provide a safer environment and also a quicker experience for guests as they enter. And I would hope that the policy would go into effect by March 1st, 2019, and if approved by City Council. Of course, that's when we probably start our newer list of concerts for the year. Bags that will be permitted would be bags that are clear plastic, vinyl, or PVC and do not exceed 14 by 6 by 14, or 1 gallon plastic freezer bags, Ziploc bags, or similar. And then small clutch bags with or without a handle or strap, not to exceed 4.5 times by 6.5. And all these regulations, what I'm looking at is actually pretty custom around the country with all facilities too as well. So it's not something that I'm just pulling out the air. An exception will also be made for medically necessary items after proper inspection at designated entrance, strictly for this purpose. And then also diaper bags, they will be allowed for families with infants and toddlers, but the child must be present too as well. And then also, this be on top of it, all public ticketed events must have private security to implement bag checks for guests entering the facilities. Of course, we cannot, our staff cannot check bags. We don't have a clearance for that, and as well as the officers that we do have as well, they can't check bags with their clearance to security. So you would have to hire out a private security, and we have been having this happen, doing this in the past already. And it's actually been working very well for us. Speeds up the line, making sure that no items that are not supposed to be brought into our facilities are not being brought into as well. So it's something that we just need to make sure that we push forward and put into our policy so we're all on the same page.
So are they going to go through women's purses?
They have a female security guard that's up there when they open up their purse, ma'am.
So to that question, would the purse be allowed? If they have a clear bag, they wouldn't necessarily need to.
There's certain purses that would be allowed, and I'll just pass this around. This is something that I would like for us to be able to give out too as well, which, should have a copy. So it just depends on the size of the bag and stuff. And it's more of course, people bringing in items that shouldn't be brought into the facility. And it's not just here, it's all over. Whenever you go to other facilities out of town, go to a sports game, go to a concert, if we could purchase metal detectors, that probably would be sufficient enough for people to be able to go through. But obviously, we can't afford the metal detector, so it would have to be somebody being able to check the bags too as well. And you got there's a lot of stuff that's being snuck into our venues, and we need to be able to have some type of security stance on what's being brought into our facilities.
Why would someone need to bring a Ziploc bag?
Well, it's just saying that they can bring it in a Ziploc bag, a clear Ziploc bag. That's all it's saying.
Okay.
I don't see women carrying the items of their person in a clear Ziploc bag.
It's not saying, again, it's not saying everything is in a clear Ziploc bag. It's just the size of the bags. Certain sizes of bags. It's not saying you can't bring in a purse, but it's actually a certain size that you can't be bigger than that type of bag. So if your bag's if on your little sheet, if you have it says which ones. Do you think that? So would you? Where are you seeing the situation at? I guess. What bothers you? I guess.
Well, you would see a clutch bag at a formal event.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not a formal event, then.
Public ticketed events.
Yes. Yes, I understand. But regular, I don't know. I'm not so much a purse person, but a lot of people, they spend a lot of money on their bags. And yes, some of them are big, but I just am surprised it's here in San Angelo already, I guess. I mean, I understand
incidents
you have
happen.
To be
incidents
safe.
happen everywhere. My personal, my biggest thing is I don't want to be the guy on the news.
I know.
Because of the size of a purse.
I know.
So regulating it is making sure everybody's safe across the board and putting in rules and regulations that they can follow. It's not saying you can't bring in your purse. It's just the size of your purse. If we're going to a concert, somebody has a purse, they get in a fight, they start swinging that purse, they got something heavy in it. What's going to happen then?
So I guess, okay, I'm slightly confused, and I'm kind of with you as well. You bring up Texas Tech. My understanding was it's just clear bags, period, right? Or do they still allow a purse within a certain size? This is kind of tough to read, I'll be honest with you.
I understand the need for security. It just seems so regulated.
Are you asking for our blessing to go to ask city council for?
Put it into our policy. Yes,
and at this point, let me clarify.
And it still can be modified. We're still in the phase of modification of it. This can come back as more discussion and stuff as well. But for me, I just feel that we need to start taking steps towards improving our security lines of how people are entering our facilities.
I totally agree with, I'm sorry.
Let me clarify. We're not taking this to council yet. What we're doing, I don't know if you mentioned it, but again, like we did last year, we're going to do an annual review of the policies with the policies committee, and this will likely be discussed as well. and we'll take whatever those recommendations are to the board and then to the city council later on. Well, because this is a safety security matter, we want to discuss it now because we want to start implementing it. At this point, we're trying to get some level of your blessing to go ahead and implement some of these security measures so that we can head off anything that could happen.
Well, in regards to policies and then facility improvements, and the reason I touch is that these are the two main things that we seem to go over. Facility improvements that we want to do annually, and then for policies we need to start doing annually. So we need to start marking a time in the calendar where this month we're going to review the facilities and then implement those things forward. And policies the same way, because 2017 is when we did the policies the
Right.
last
It's
time.
about this time of
We're
year.
on the same timeline right now.
Yeah,
We're
so we need
on the same
so we
timeline.
need to implement those timelines so annually these kind of things can be brought up and then we can make our recommendations.
And that's why I'm bringing it right now. That's why it's brought
I
forward.
Well, I'm talking about, we formed a subcommittee last time,
Yeah.
went through and discussed
He's-
those kind of items.
we're going to do that again.
Okay.
This one's separate because we want to just get it out there
It's a
up front.
safety.
Like, I think the best way to, if you were gonna try to get narrow down a policy on this, is it'd probably just look at a few different examples. You know, what's the NFL do? I know that their bag policy is very strict. What does maybe, other cities do?
And that's where I'm following from a venue manager's site, and they all have the discussion of security policies and clear bag policies and just seeing how everybody's moving forth. And honestly, this is how a lot of people are moving forward. I mean, with smaller clutch bags, not the big old bags, bringing in purses.
Thousands of people there. We don't have that kind of attendance here.
Thousands of people.
Well, if you're talking about like a Cowboys game in Dallas,
Talking tens of thousands.
But it only takes one to cause an accident, though.
Well,
Out of
I've gone
1,000.
to quite a lot of events, and I believe in implementing security policies. And of course, we talked about it last year when the thing in Vegas happened. And we've got to keep the people that go in safe. So if you need a recommendation, I'll make a motion for time's sake that we continue seeking,
continue.
that we pursue the security policies and do some research on it.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be, gone over a little bit and just kind of maybe customized for San Angelo, maybe. I don't know.
So this is a discussion item, correct? We don't actually.
Yes,
this is not
it's
an
a
action
discussion
We don't need
item.
a
It's
vote
something,
then?
so next time we present it, I'll come with a few different arenas, different security policies, so you can see what the different measurements that they're all taking.
It's written so you
That way you
could,
can see them.
it's written so you could take action on it. This
One
will-
thing, go ahead, sorry, Carl.
This can continue to be discussed as part of the policy review.
Well, that's why I made the
But we
motion
ju-
that we go ahead and move forward, okay? Bring back some ideas so that we can then recommend to council which idea we feel that we should go forward with.
The recommendation
Like
is to
that.
move forward with ideas, present those to the board. Again, does that need to be an action item, or are you okay with just taking our
I'm fine with it.
recommendation?
I'm fine with
Okay.
taking
Fair
that.
enough.
Sorry, just clarifying. So you're just bringing it to us, put it in our minds.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
I think Don was
it's a
gonna say
safety and security item. It's paramount. And we do want to start implementing some of these, at least on a trial basis, just to see how they work and to keep things safer.
And I don't want to just throw it in there and, hey, you can't bring in your bags or whatever. I do want to have like the little paper sheet that we had right there to be able to give those out to our customers for the first few events, letting them know, hey, this is how we're moving forward, and making sure that the public information is pushed out there correctly.
Good idea.
Have you discussed it with PD at all?
Yes, I've actually discussed it actually with some of the private security that actually does the work and stuff, and they definitely approve of it. It definitely would make it easier. What really would make it easier is having a metal detector out there and just telling them to empty your pockets and going through.
You're thinking like something like the rodeo, that's something that you'd want to start trying to do right away?
Only for short-term public facility agreements.
Short term. Okay, so that would be excluded?
Yes, sir. They
Isn't
do
that-
their own. They have their own security.
Doesn't
however
that
they do
just
their-
fall away from the concept of it only takes one person?
Yes, but they're not on a short-term public facility agreement. They're on a contract. So it'd have to be different. This
They're
would be.
bad if something goes wrong, it's on them, not us.
Yeah.
You're saying that it's because they're more of in position of a lessee, that falls on them?
Right.
They'll make the decision of the.
And that's what risk management says?
We can check with risk management and see what they say.
I think that's a great idea. Tim?
It is a good idea. I would think they'll come back with something even more stringent.
Jackets.
Okay, so I think, again, bring back some ideas and some thoughts on that, some other examples, and I think it's a great discussion.
When do we think the committee will meet to start talking policies?
Do we have one?
I thought we did.
Reviewing, when we looking at the prior meeting minutes, only Billy has said that he would like to be on the policy committee.
you, Billy.
So I do need another.
I'll do it.
One more.
No, we had three
Yeah, three.
last time.
So we can't have a
It
quorum.
should be 3.
I was on it last time, so I'm willing to forego my position if someone else would like to take that on.
You had questions. Why don't you be on the committee?
Me?
No.
Oh, Tim?
I was on it 2 cycles ago.
Your turn.
Well, this is the
Naomi.
thing. I think it's Karen's because we did appoint Karen last time, but then some issues came up.
Right.
But I
That's why
think,
I'm not, that's why I didn't volunteer, because I don't want to be in that same position.
well, we wouldn't do that.
She was the fourth person that would have made a quorum. That's why she had to.
Yeah, that's why we had it. So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that came up?
If I'm needed, I'd be happy to volunteer.
Well,
Consider it.
I think we would enjoy your perspective.
Absolutely. Your
We'll work on
perspective would be
scheduling that
great.
meeting, start those policy reviews.
So we'll go ahead and finish with that one. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move then discussion of capturing some revenue for future facility improvements and recommending any related matters.
Weren't we putting that one on back burner for now, right?
Yeah, at the last meeting, I think Don had made the recommendation to go ahead and postpone that based off the council's decision on flatter percentage. So again, I'll take a recommendation to table that or whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with you. I think we need to figure out what's going to go on with the flat versus the percentage basis before we really make a move on that.
Yeah, I think we should continue to table it until council makes their.
So I'll make a motion that we table it until we get further along in the.
We have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect. So we'll go ahead and table that item until we have further information. So the next item would be consideration of future agenda items. I think Dale had,
Dale had a couple that he brought up that were good.
so they clarify for me, but the communication, I don't know how to word it. You guys can word it probably better than I can, but just the discussion of better communication with our partners.
Or how can we be more effective in helping Sid? How can we either advocate what he's wanting to get done, work with other organizations that also have a stake in what we're trying to accomplish? How do we best do that? I know we have a meeting in March, right? A joint meeting with CVB and the rodeo, and that's certainly a step in that direction. So, but what other? I'd like to hear from Sid. What are the things that he boasts?
Well, we're getting into discussion. Well, let's put it on the agenda so we can discuss it.
But
and
that's
ask
what
him.
I'm saying.
That's what he's saying, yeah.
Okay.
Then I've got one, and I don't know necessarily if this is really where our jurisdiction falls or not, but going back to the percentage versus the flat fee, I'd like to understand more, what are the reasons for flat fees on certain aspects? For instance, like we were all understanding that at least I was, that the percentage seems to make more sense. So I was just trying to get a gauge or get an explanation on why or how did some of these organizations go to these flat rates? Because it seems to me, you might be able to incentivize different organizations to do more if they get a larger percent or a less percent one year or so on and so forth. But I don't know if that's necessarily our jurisdiction, but if it is, then that'd be something that I'd like to.
Because that was an agenda item, Carl, I'll ask you, are we able to still discuss that? Because I can give you some background on some of those flat fees.
Well,
Y'all may not want
maybe
me to, but.
I just,
I'd like to
I
hear
don't
what
know
you
how
have-
that
what you know.
incorporates into an agenda item, but my main,
Can we reopen an agenda item that we discussed earlier?
It's on the agenda.
Probably better safe not to. We probably could, but it's probably better safe not to.
but I guess in the future, that's kind of one of the things I was interested in understanding, and it doesn't even need to be in this meeting. But then the part that might make it an agenda item is understanding exactly why and how, but more importantly, going forward, when we see organizations really bringing heads in beds and really bringing economic activity, if they're just getting a flat fee, that doesn't really necessarily incentivize, these certain organizations to do more or to get more money. You're just kind of giving these organizations money all the time just at a flat fee. Whereas if it's a percentage and we have an opportunity to maybe make this organization go up a certain 0.1% or whatever of hot tax because they're doing bigger events, then that might help some of these other organizations. I don't know how to, I'm dragging a bunch of stuff into one item, but I don't know how to kind of make that happen. But
And we kind of touched on that, and I know exactly what you're saying, and I think maybe in part of the history is that at some point we were percentage basis on the big items, and then people came in and asked for money, and then they said, okay, we'll allocate.
Well, let's make it an item.
Yeah.
Before we go to, but I think that goes with you, Dale, suggesting an item being added to discuss what people are doing to justify those funds. So I think we need to discuss what that is. What is the current process? What are people doing to justify it, and how can we possibly do that? I think, so we need to add that item, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Tim,
and
where you going?
let me, and I
Yeah,
say this
yeah.
with all due respect, but I think we all, if you've got questions about processes that are not discussed at the board level or in these meetings, it's upon us to go back and find out. Go talk to the finance department. Go talk to your council member that appointed you. Go talk to Sid and Carl in a private meeting and find out what all you need to find out so that you're best prepared.
Yeah, 'cause as Steve was referring to, there's some history there that he and I know
So do
as to
I.
how we got here. But we can't talk about it right now. But we can add to the agenda to talk about justifying how we work towards justifying our allocation and why it is set up the way it is.
All right. And I'm going to throw this out. From a city council perspective, their job is to manage and protect the funds that are being brought into the city. And when there's a history that we're not talking about of misuse, then they have to take steps to.
Part of the situation, I mean, the current finance folks don't necessarily have that history and knowledge.
Right. So, again, I go back to the point. I think it's behold to us to go do our homework and be prepared to be able to present fully what we believe should be happening and why we believe it should happen.
Sounds good. So we'll go ahead and add that. Do you have all those items? That's it. You'll go back and
On
add those.
YouTube.
I guess just the last thing would be just putting an emphasis on doing more joint meetings with CVB.
Emphasis on what
Well, trying to, make that happen more often in the future.
continue to work together.
Yeah.
And meet
Well,
together.
I mean, literally
meetings.
every 3
And physically meet
months
together.
or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be.
Whatever that cycle looks like, that we meet
And-
on a
and-
frequent basis.
And discussion base is going to be, what's the discussion?
How do we help each other? How do we work together? Because we have our responsibilities that overlap. And where those responsibilities overlap, we should be able to work together and figure that out. Whatever that looks like. I don't know what that looks like, but
I think initially we were trying to meet quarterly, and that it never really happened that way. So if we can keep the meetings to maybe a couple a year, and talk about where we overlap, like you mentioned. But do you want that on the agenda to talk about?
Doesn't need to be an agenda item. I guess it's just a thought to throw out there in the.
I think we can address it on that first one Dale suggested. Just the overall, bring all the stakeholders together and better communication. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?